We've surpassed all those, mortality kind of cutoffs of, businesses that don't make it 5 years, 10 years. We're all past all that. So today we're going to talk about kind of what I see as the growth years. And this is where you enter, Andy, as the owner. And we talk to you and Tom Jones and Peter Berg about what that period looks like running up to the franchise.
In today's economy, more people than ever are looking to buy and sell businesses. But how do you do it? Welcome to the Deal Board, presented by Transworld Business Advisors. Straight talk about real deals and real people. Listen to stories, interviews, and expert advice to help your business sale, merger, or acquisition process. Now, here are your business exit experts, Andy and Jessica.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Deal Board and to our series about Transworld and about the history and growth of our brand. So last time we were together, we talked about the early years. So from the mid to late 70s all the way through to the early 90s. And I think what's really amazing about that story, Andy, is that, most companies don't make it that long at all, let alone through that many ownership changes, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty amazing that what happened, and there were several owners, there were several partnerships going on, and usually things kind of explode. And then, of course, a business owner dies, and then the business continues on. And you know why it continued on? Because of our business, because selling businesses works. And it can create an incredible legacy like we've done. I mean, we talk about all the time how hard it is to start a business and what the mortality rate for these businesses is very, very high. And so selling a business and keeping that intellectual property going it just works. And so this is a great story.
It is a great story. So today we're really getting into where Transworld hits its stride. So we've been through a few different owners. We've surpassed all those, mortality kind of cutoffs of, businesses that don't make it 5 years, 10 years. We're all past all that. So today we're going to talk about kind of what I see as the growth years. And this is where you enter, Andy, as the owner. And we talk to you and Tom Jones and Peter Berg about what that period looks like running up to the franchise. So maybe you can kind of just give us an overview of some of the milestones along the way that we're going to hear about in today's episode.
Yeah. So we decided, when I decided to move to Florida, my wife and we decided to move to Florida. Again, I told a little bit of the story, but I was looking to buy a business, wound up at Transworld one day and was intrigued with both the business and the idea of becoming a business broker because, again, I didn't know what Florida wanted or needed. So I joined the firm, agreed to join the firm in late 94. It takes a while to get your license down here in Florida. Back then, you actually had to take classes and you had to go to a big auditorium and take a test. No, it's not online or anything. So I wound up joining in 95, in March of 95. And we were going along. 95 was a good year for us. I sold several businesses. We were doing well as a company. And then 96 was a tough year. I forget why 96 was a tough year, but we were just struggling. We had some big deals maybe fall through. I had my sophomore slump, which I've talked about in the past, what a sophomore slump is. And so at the beginning of 97, Don's full retirement kicks in at IBM. And he, has his boat and he's spending more time on his boat. And he really wasn't in the growth mode. And I was, as a young man, I was 32 years old. And I'm like, we want to grow this business. And several people here at Transworld wanted that too. So I buy Transworld on March 25th, 1997. And Don and I literally switched seats and we tell that story. And then, one of the next big milestones that we hit as we grew was we did a deal with New Tech. It was called Wilshire Partners at the time. It was a thing called the Capco program where they were investing in small businesses. I was showing them some businesses to invest in. And through some conversations and one lunch, Barry Sloan, who's still at New Tech, said to me with their partners, said, hey, we should invest in Transworld. So they decided to make an investment in Transworld in November of 99. It was a substantial investment. It was $3 million. And I was able to take some of that money and grow Transworld. And we did. And we started going out there in the world in 2001, they loved us so much, we wound up opening another one in New York, and they bought into Transworld in Florida. And again, we kept growing through that process. And we opened up right after New Tech goes public. They decided, hey, we don't like you anymore. I mean, they just didn't like the business. Not good for public companies. Not good for predicting cues. So they decided to divest. And several people that we talked to on the podcast, two of them being Tom Jones and Peter Berg, and other people invest in Transworld and buy Transworld, and I do some more investment, and we buy back the shares from New Tech. And in the process, the attorney was working with someone who was buying another franchise, not by the name of John Ruggieri. He wanted to open up a franchise in Orlando of another business brokerage, and he said, well, you should talk to these guys at Transworld. They just put all this money into Transworld and buying it. They want to expand. So that was our first real outside office where we expanded in Florida, and that went very well. And John's a great guy, and he wound up doing one of the things I tell everybody not to do is buy a business that you have a listing. So he did that and decided that he wanted to leave Transworld. So then in 2006, we decided we were feeling really good. We were growing. We bought another brokerage up in Jacksonville to kind of complete our East Coast expansion of Transworld. And again, going very well. 2006, 2007, the economy's on fire. 2008, doing incredibly well. And then 2009 comes along and it's like, the world starts to crater. And we decide, hey, it might be time to think about franchising. And so that's the timeline between the years that I bought it and right up to the time we decide to franchise.
Yeah. And it's a really great interview that I have with you, Peter, and Tom. Tom actually was with Transworld before you were. So he gives us some insight into what that transition looks like. Peter joined a few years after you. But it was a really expansive time, I think would be the word. So lots of stuff that you guys faced, from investors, reinvestment, recessions, all the way leading up to franchise. So that's going to take us through basically the first two parts, the first 50% of the story. We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. We hope that you enjoy us sharing our history of Transworld with you. Andy, thank you again for all your research, because I know this has been a lot of heavy lifting trying to figure out all the dates and stuff, but we've got a great episode today.
It's a great episode, and I appreciate everybody's part in listening, and all the people that have been a part of Transworld over the last 40 years, especially in the last 10. I mean, there's so many people that we want to have on the podcast, and you've heard from them in the past, doing all things like listing of the week and deal of the week, which we have this week. So it's a great episodes. And hopefully they'll be around for a long time so people can understand just an incredible story.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And it is listing of the week. And we have Joe DiBartolo here from Transworld Business Brokers of West Florida. But he's all over the place. He goes wherever he can go to get a deal done. Joe, you are working on a very nice construction company. Tell me a little bit about it.
25 years old. It's about 95 employees, W-2 employees. That's about the earnings are about 1.2 a year, and it's selling for 3.4 million.
So 3.4 million. So it's about 3 times, right?
Yes.
Yes. And a 25-year-old company.
Yes.
So it sounds like a very nice company, been around for a long time, proven track record.
Yes.
Nice. The projection.
Yeah, projections are good. Everything's good. There's all the taxes, all the financial documents.
Good books and records. Yes. And it's got a lot of work in progress.
Yes, yeah, it has a lot of, the whip is pretty good. It has a lot of
whip.
A lot of work.
Using industry terms on you folks.
Sorry, a lot of whip.
No, it's all good. A lot of whip. So, Joe, so you said you had an SBA qualified?
Yes, I did.
So 10 or 20% down?
Yes, about 20% down.
Yeah, 20% down. So it sounds like a great deal. Joe, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
You just email me or you can call me at 352-999-1815.
There it is. Give Joe a call. This is a good one. Won't last long, right?
Yeah.
All right, buddy. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, welcome everybody. So today we're telling the story of Transworld as we're celebrating 10 years of franchising the brand. And I'm really lucky to tell phase 2 of the Transworld story. I have 3 of the original 12 shareholders that began the franchising journey, and they're going to catch us up from, we got through the early stage already. And now we're going to talk really about the growth stage, how Transworld became a dominant force in Florida and then took off into deciding to franchise across the US and internationally as well. So I want to kick us off with Tom. You're kind of the next step in the journey. You were of the shareholders, you're the first to jump on and join. So take us back to that year and tell us what it was like when you joined Transworld.
So I joined, we were trying to figure that out the other day. I think I joined Transworld in somewhere around 1992. And it wasn't my first experience with business brokerage. I started in Raleigh, North Carolina 5 years earlier, working for VR business brokers right out of college, my career. And when I moved to Florida, I also joined a VR office down here. And that VR office closed, which forced me to go work for a real estate company. And I got to know some new agents there by the name of Don and Bonnie Parrish. They were recent retirees, or he was a earlier retiree from IBM, and they were looking for a new career. And this was business brokerage was it for them. They were working as a team, and then they found an opportunity by the name of Transworld Business Brokers at the time, and it was a small office. I'm sure Andy will tell you a little bit more about that. But the original owner of that business passed away unexpectedly, and his wife is selling the assets of what was left. And Don and Bonnie wanted to get involved in that and purchase that business, but they needed to have somebody that was knowledgeable about business brokerage to help them grow it and do something with that particular business. So they convinced me to join them, and I left where I was and joined them. And it was a very modest beginning, extremely modest. And we grew the business from there. I think we had, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 agents when Andy got involved. And then from that point, after a short time, Don and Bonnie wanted to retire or take a step back from ownership anyway. And they got Andy involved and interested in the business, and he acquired it. And that was really the real beginning of Transworld as it is today. That's when, Andy took control of the business and started to, put all his energy and efforts and money into growing it, infrastructure and marketing and advertising. And that's when we started to really gain traction.
Yeah. It's really interesting when you're talking, Tom, because a lot of our listeners are fellow business broker offices, Transworld franchisees, and a lot of them look at Transworld Florida as this large, very competitive business. And thinking about back in 92, starting out 3 or 4 agents, it just takes time, right? It doesn't start like this. You don't dominate from day one.
Oh, we were literally a no name on the block. Nobody knew us, and the little they did know of us was not good. So in a sense, you could say that we were starting, from a deficit, in our business. And it really, really took a lot of effort to change sort of the perception in the marketplace of what Transworld was all about. Andy's motto has always been doing good deals for good people, and we really put that in place and started to build a name for ourselves. And we started, we kind of instituted some really interesting marketing. The postcards were early on that really launched our business and really drove our inventory in the early days. Also, and I remember this very clearly, Andy came to us with the idea of putting up billboards. And at the time, I think it was like 50 or 60 grand to put up billboards around town. And that was like all the money in the world to us. And it was a big gamble, and it paid off tremendously because it put us on the map with the public. The places all the places that people drove in South Florida, the major thoroughfares, there was a billboard, Transworld Business Brokers at that time. And, we sell businesses, very simple message. And it really resonated amongst, business owners. And everybody started to recognize what we were all about. We were still a very small, tiny little company, but the perception was in the marketplace that we were huge. And we really started, everything that we did was to drive inventory. Still is today, but but these things really, these big gambles really paid off big dividends for us.
Yeah. And I'm sure there was gambles that didn't so much. So we've been talking about this guy, Andy, that's entered at some point. So Andy Cagnetta, current CEO of Transworld Business Advisors. Andy, talk about when you joined a couple years after Tom, and what was your experience like in those first couple years?
Yeah. I try to tell the story quickly, but I joined because I was a customer. I came down to Florida looking to buy a business. And I was looking around to a lot of different business brokers because I had never run into a business broker. So I ran into Transworld, and I was looking in the newspaper because that's the way you advertised back then. And there was all these business brokers here in Florida, and I started visiting them. And many of them, as Tom, kind of alluded to, were, they had deficits in their reputations. They were like used car salespeople. But, through the process, and I kept at it, I wound up at Transworld, and Don and Bonnie ran a different ship. I mean, he was from IBM. She was a great business broker. And so immediately, I walk in there, and Tom's there, and a few other people, and Don and Bonnie, and it just felt different. And they invited me to join the team. And so I joined the team as a salesperson because I thought this would be a great way to get to know Florida. I didn't know anybody in town. And so, quickly, Tom and I and Don and Bonnie and a few others, we're just trying to, grow Transworld. And, again, Tom saying, just guerrilla marketing. And until I decided 2 years in, Don took an early buyout on his retirement, which meant he got, benefits, but he didn't get his retirement income. And then his full retirement income kicked in early 97. So we decided, and my wife and I decided to buy Transworld at the time. And so I bought Transworld. Tom, was our lead trainer at the time. And we decided that we were going to, expand, and we were going to put some money into the business.
How is that? I mean, I'm interested because we sell businesses for a living and we coach people going through this transitions. Like for both of you, Tom and Andy, like how is that ownership transition from, the Don and Bonnie era to the new era, really?
Well, I have to say, I think I broke confidentiality a little bit. So I think we were kind of frustrated at the time. Nothing against Don. Don was doing a great job, but his head was, he had a nice big boat. I forget what kind of boat that was, but he was spending a little bit more time on that. And, several of us, we had one computer. We needed, 5 computers. We needed to kind of move things forward. So there were some people and some frustrations. So I kind of walked around and said, hey, what happens if I bought the place? And I got basically, I got some good support. And so I walked into Don's office. I actually wrote him a letter because I wanted to make sure I got it all, got all my feelings out before he had a chance to respond. And he responded positively. And literally, we just changed desks. I mean, he literally took my seat. And they were expanding at the time. They kept hiring people. We had a few different offices in that building. We kept taking more offices in that crazy building that we were in. And so Don and I just switched chairs one day, and I was in charge. And and Tom was behind me. We had a few other great people like Jerry Everts who walked into my office and said, you either did the craziest thing that you've ever done or the smartest thing. I'm not sure which. So, again, we were in the game of just trying to get our name out there still.
Yeah, Don and Andy were in different places, obviously, in their lives. Don was sort of, the wheels were down, and he was, I guess at the time he was in his mid-50s, late 50s. So, he was kind of, coasting and winding it down, so to speak, where Andy was, gosh, I'm probably 26, 27 years old, 28, somewhere in that area, and, full of piss and vinegar and ready to take this challenge on. And that was the big difference. And we could see it as agents when, immediately there was, Andy, kudos to him. Excuse me. Kudos to him. He reinvested everything we earned back in the business and new phone systems and, computers, and always upgrading everything, doing the things that needed to be done to make all the agents more productive. And that's what we were all hungry for. We were all looking for that, at the end of the Don and Bonnie period. So it was great timing for us. I don't know how much longer we would have been able to carry on in the manner that we were, because we were growing, because the infrastructure wasn't keeping up with our growth.
Yeah. Well, and also now we're thinking about this. So Andy bought it in 97, right? So now we're on the precipice of the .com era, right? So Andy was shopping for businesses in the newspaper, and everything's changing. You guys are trying some of the guerrilla marketing things. I think there's still pictures of those billboards somewhere too, Andy. We'll have to dig them up and tag them on the episode at some point.
For years in our folders, in our marketing folders, we had the picture of the sign, the Transworld sign. So I think we got more mileage over the years showing the billboard in the marketing materials than we actually did having the thing up.
Yeah, exactly. Which is totally the point, is like sometimes marketing is about the after effects and the PR you can use afterwards. So, okay. So we're 97, what's next? Like, what's the next big milestone for Transworld at this point?
Yeah, well, I think we were kind of, again, just operating, and we were going out there. I remember I called my competitor across the street and said, I thought I was a hotshot for buying it. And I said, well, if you ever want to sell, you could, sell to me. And the competitor across the street said, well, I'm not going to sell to you, but if we did sell, it'd be a lot of money because we're number one. And I'm like, you're number one. We thought we were pretty good by then. And they're like, yeah, we have 37 listings and you guys have 32. So I think that was the last time they had more listings than us. Again, as Tom said, we were very competitive at the time. And we were, just out there looking to do things. And I had a classmate from college that they started a thing called Capco program in New York. And they were bringing it to Florida, and they flew down and they were looking to buy businesses. And they were looking to invest, millions of dollars into these businesses. And through some meetings that we had with businesses and some lunches in between and a couple of dinners, they looked at me and they said, we want to invest in Transworld. And so the next big milestone was in 99 when we did a deal with New Tech. That it was called a different company. It was called Wilshire at the time. And we did a deal where they funded us. And they give us $3 million. And you brought it up because it was the .com era. It was 99. Things are flying high. They give us $3 million, and all of it was for this .com play that we were just about to do. And then April of 2000 rolls around, and there's literally huge crash. The internet world is in smoldering. And they call me up and they say, don't spend the money on the internet play. And I said, I didn't spend any of the money yet. And they said, well, you can use 10% of the money to grow. And that's what you need to start doing. You need to grow, and you need to take $300,000 and invest it in your business. And you need to move to new offices, and you need to hire some competitors. And so that's what we did. We moved, and we started looking for new people. And I think that is just about when Peter came along.
I was gonna say, and one of those new people, that new person was Peter Berg, right? Is Peter, that's what that one you entered?
And interestingly enough, I was one of those .com, .bomb refugees, right? So I had at the time, my background was in banking, and I did sort of what Transworld did as an investment banker, but I got involved in a transaction where I actually bought a company and took the company public. It was a .com company, and the .com era was followed by the .bomb era. So Andy mentioned in April, the whole world blew up. So I blew up as well. And my company blew up, and it was a big fiery ball of, disaster. A couple people, two of my closest friends who are still two of my closest friends, both were friends with Andy. And they said, hey, why don't you talk to Andy? He's a good guy. He's a smart guy. I was just looking to network with people, figuring out what to do. And I met with Andy, and I came to a sales meeting. I met Tom. And of course, Andy told me at that time, and I tell everybody in class, that Andy said, Peter, guys like you, they don't make it in this business. That's when he first met me. He told me that. Now
I'm going to eat that forever.
Yeah, he's going to eat that forever. But what he meant was that I was like a home run swinger, swinging, hit for the fences. Trying to do a stock deal and, make a whole bunch of money. And this is not that kind of business. This is a roll up your shirt sleeves and get into the mud and duke it out, hitting singles and doubles. And so I took that to heart, and I came to a meeting, and I met Tom and some of the other guys and said, you know what? I think I just want to be an agent at Transworld. I had a big company. I didn't want payroll and all the problems of running a company. And I wanted to be home for dinner, and I had small children at the time. And so I said, Andy, I just want to be an agent. And I did my training with Tom, and it was a robust 30 minutes of training. And basically he told me, get 15 listings in 90 days and you'll be successful. And what to do, how to get them, and what to do once I got them. And I just went out and did it. And, and the rest was history at that point. And, it's worked out pretty well since then. That was 22 years ago.
Yeah. It's so funny to hear you guys talk, because there's so many parallels of what you all still teach now, right? I think actually Tom and Peter, in your training session for new agents, new franchisees, you still say 15 listings in 90 days, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good measure. If your first 3 months, you just focus on marketing and getting listings and not worry about buyers and not even really worry about selling the listings, but just get them, package them up, get them out there and get the next one. And if you do that and you have enough inventory, then you'll be successful, because you'll have things that sell and you'll be successful. And if you don't have inventory, then a year later, you'll run out of whatever savings you have will be gone, and you'll be looking for a job. And that's really how it works.
Yeah. So speaking of inventory, so you guys are now in growth mode. I think probably you're well past 36 listings as an office, right? So you're in the early 2000s. Now what's next? Where is Transworld going? Are you hitting the stride of where you were at before franchising with, lots of agents, multiple offices? How did that all come to fruition?
So we were doing well, and we're in Fort Lauderdale. We're in our new offices, about 6,000 square foot in this tin can on the airport. But it was a nice offices, and we were growing, and we had an opportunity through our attorney, Greenspoon Mortar, from someone who was about to buy a franchise. And we had just gone through this process of buying out new tech. Now I could go back, but in a minute. But we had our attorney, who's Greg Blottig, who was an amazing attorney for all of Transworld, including back in the Blake days, Sid Blake days. But he recommended that this person from Orlando, John Ruggieri, if he's going to open up an office, he should open up a Transworld office. So he came down, visited with us. We're having our Thursday morning meetings, and he's like, I need to buy this company. And so he wound up buying. So that was our first office outside of South Florida. We had opened up a small little office in in Miami. We had a little satellite office when we hired Frank Filer in Boca Raton. So we had a couple small little offices around Florida, around South Florida, and then now we were going to open up. We were going to open up Orlando. And at the time, we had just bought out NewTek, and NewTek went public. So in 99, we could do a deal with NewTek. 2000, the world ends. And we're doing pretty well with their money, and we're growing it, and we're trying to figure out what's next. And, and in 2001, they gave us a little bit of the money in equity. And then they go public and they say, listen, we don't like the business. We don't like the business brokerage business. It's not good for a public company. You have weird revenues and earnings because you do a deal, you don't do a deal, So as most people here are listening to this, if they're in the business brokerage industry, they understand. So we wound up buying them out, and we decided to go out to the marketplace and talk to some of our favorite people in town to see if they wanted to invest. And Peter and Tom approached me and others and said, hey, we'd like to invest. Let us buy the company. And that really...
Well, let us buy the shares, the NewTek shares.
Yeah, let us buy the NewTek shares. So NewTek owned about a third. We wound up doing a deal, and they came in. I bought a little bit more shares. Some of my family members bought shares. And, in 2002, we wholly owned the company again. And it was the first quarter, right when we bought it, was the first quarter we did $1 million in fees. And even NewTek, when they were selling us, he called me up and he's like, you guys just did $1 million this quarter. You're about to explode. And we're like, it was just lucky.
It was lucky. Yeah. Yeah, I did my first big deal,
So we, bought them out, and we started growing the company. We started growing through Florida. We realized that Orlando was working, and so we opened up in Tampa, and we wound up buying a business brokerage in Jacksonville, and we grew. We basically grew to 9 offices, and mostly 4 big regions, but 9 small offices throughout the state, and we just kept hiring people. And it was really good times. I mean, from 2000, basically 2 through 2009, we had a really good run where we kept growing, kept hiring agents, kept training people. We would bring everybody to Fort Lauderdale. Peter was part of that training. Tom was always a part of that training, and it was going really well.
So great upward swing. So what happens in 2009? Like, I think most of our listeners know, but what happens in 2009 to the business brokerage industry?
I've almost gone broke, I think, twice in this business. Once when I just bought it, and 3 months later, I wound up not having enough money. It was probably the way I structured the deal, and not realizing that my personal expenses were going to exceed anything that I could ever take out of the business in the first 6 months. So I had to borrow a little bit more money from my father-in-law, which was a tough conversation. And then in 2009 comes along. We're doing well. We're distributing money. I think at the time we said, let's just keep close to 100,000 in the bank. We won't need much more than that ever. And 2009 comes and literally almost wipes out our Orlando office and anything on the west coast of Florida. Those areas of Florida just got crushed. South Florida hung in there, and North Florida, our Jacksonville office, remained very steady. In fact, it grew during that economic downturn. But 2009, we were just scrambling to try to figure out what to do next.
Yeah.
And we had ideas which kind of lead us to the next segment of this, but we had ideas that we were going to try to grow outside Florida. And at the time, the one story I say that was kind of like, we're not going to be able to grow outside of Florida was we hired this secretary out of and Frank, God bless Frank, hired this secretary that he probably met at a karaoke bar or whatever. And he hired this very nice woman that turned out to be a reality TV star. And I wish I could remember her name right off the top of my head, but she won a VH1 singing contest, had a record contract, and her handlers were saying, "You never held a real job. We dare you to hold a real job." So she tried to hold the job, and we were all deciding whether or not we're going to drive up and who's going to fire her. So we were like taking short straws. Who's going to drive 5 hours to handle this mess we got going up in Jacksonville? And it just made us realize that we need good partners, and we need partners if we're going to go to Atlanta, if we're going to go to Charlotte, that we needed partners like we had in John Ruggieri, which through this whole process, John wound up buying one of his listings, which we always recommend people don't do. And he decided to exit the business. So we bought him out as well. So we owned Florida 100%.
Yeah. And it makes sense because if you think about it, as you guys became a partnership and you brought on more shareholders that were helping grow the Florida business. And that was that really great run that you all had leading up to the early 2010s that you did with partners, right? And more people helping build and grow the business. So I'm wondering, what board meeting was it at when somebody brought it up? Like, what about franchising? Or who was the first person that had that idea that this might be the next phase for Transworld?
Well, I will give Frank Filer credit. He was definitely one that definitely wanted to do it. I say I was mediocre on it, that we would have regular board meetings with everybody. Everybody realized that franchising was probably a good partnership arrangement, that we could grow the business without using our own capital and getting some good people to join us. It was just about how we were going to do that. And it was Frank's introduction to a gentleman by the name of Keith Knus, who is an attorney up in Boca Raton. And when he gave us his bill to move forward, we all looked at each other and said, this is not going to work. And we decided we had to go out and find. And he said, well, if you're not going to do it yourself, you should talk to the folks at United Franchise Group.
Yeah, which we'll get into that whole franchising story in our next section together. But Peter and Tom won't be with us for that. So I want to get your take on the growth that's happened since then. So Peter, since the franchising model, from your perspective, what's happened to Transworld and how has your role really transformed too?
Sure. So, coming into Transworld, my background I've been involved in larger types of transactions and more investment banking type of transactions, companies that making over $1 million or $2 million of profits, which is not exactly the model of Transworld. The mechanics are the same really of doing a deal, but the numbers, you add a zero here or there. And so I always knew that I wanted to get back to my roots on that. But, Andy, like you said, this isn't a home run game. You gotta, as my motto is, little deals pay the bills, big deals pay the frills. So I just started to slowly integrate larger transactions into my model of, small, medium, and large. Once we got going with the franchise, and we started, getting partners around the country, bright people like yourself, people, other great entrepreneurs from other major cities, a lot of opportunities started coming in where people were like, hey, I know how to sell a small business. I don't know how to sell a larger business. Can you help? So it became an opportunity for us to create a business model, which is very unique in that we have a national footprint with people on the ground that can service a client locally. They can run over to somebody's office in a moment's notice, yet have a central office where we could provide back office support and more depth than a franchisee could possibly be able to produce on their own. So since that time, my own personal practice has been has grown larger, and I've worked with many of the franchisees on a national basis. And so I would say that, the biggest impact for me has been, that kind of business model.
Yeah. And now with the M&A division, I mean, there's very, very large deals getting done across the network. So Andy was kind of right. But you were also right, Peter. It just took a few years to evolve, right?
Yeah, but I'll tell you, he was right and is right. And, I have fun, we have fun ribbing each other about it because, I've, many hundreds of millions of dollars of businesses sold later. Obviously, I have been, thank God, been successful in this business. But I would have struck out if I went out immediately and tried to sell a $5 or $10 million business and not done what Tom said, which is get 15 listings in 90 days. I would have in a year spent the last, pennies I had and I would have gotten a job somewhere. So, the motto still holds true.
Yeah, you got to build to that level. You just can't start there.
Yeah.
Sure.
Even if you're coming from doing that
right.
You've got to really get down and get to the basics and then start integrating it in. Franchising has allowed that to accelerate to a much broader place. And then there's really no company in the country. And most of the larger investment banks or the mid-sized investment banks have an office or two offices. Maybe they have a New York and a San Francisco office or, something like Chicago and Dallas. But nobody's in, 200 plus cities across the country in every state. And so it's a really good partnership that we have. And it's a service that we can offer that really is unmatched in small market M&A.
Yeah, it really is. So Tom, we started with you. I want to come back and wrap with you because you've seen Transworld, the modern day version of Transworld, pretty much throughout its whole journey. So same question to you, like how has your role changed since we've expanded into franchising, but also did you expect any of this when you walked into that office that first day?
Maybe I should start there. It's funny, you hear throughout your career, you hear other people say, they got the benefit of being in a ground floor opportunity. This was truly a ground floor opportunity for me. And, I'm very blessed to have had it. Really ground floor. So, in terms of the franchising and how they kind of changed our business overall is, basically, when we started franchising, we started developing the franchise offices and whatnot. It forced us as a company to really create a real formal and robust training program. Not only were we, we're responsible for other people outside of our own organization and their success. So it really put the onus on us to really create something really special in the industry, something very, very comprehensive. And we've done that. We put, Andy put together the greatest team of trainers in this business, no doubt. I mean, Peter and myself and Randy Bring and others that are experts in this, and we share all this information, all the things that we've learned through the School of Hard Knocks, trying to help people become successful and avoid the pitfalls that we experienced ourselves. So I think that was obviously that's helped our company grow and our franchisees grow and become more and more successful. And we're always, revisiting that and refining that. We just recently did it. We all the trainers pulled together and we looked at what we've been, presenting over the years. And Andy told us that, listen, we got to do better. We got to update this and come forward with something even better than what we have. And we just completed that. And we're rolling that out now. So we're going to continue to do that. And as the franchise model has helped us, our operations here in Florida, which it's helped us develop what we're doing here. And Peter, has just explained.
And technology, the investment in technology over the system wide is many millions of dollars. Yes. And it's not something that we would have ever made that investment at that level just for our, say 100 people that we have here in Florida.
Exactly.
And so we're the beneficiaries of that technology, and it's helping us be much more productive and allows us to, to handle the volumes that we're handling. I mean, we're doing, we'll probably do close to 400 transactions this year in Florida.
One thing
And
you mentioned,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. One
No,
thing
I'm
you
just
mentioned,
saying-
Jessica, was you'd asked me about from the beginning to where I'm at right now, my own personal business. What I found, and I remember my mother telling me this when I first decided to get into this business, that, oh, that's a transaction business. You need to get a job with a paycheck. And, I obviously went against her advice, but what I found, and Peter can attest to this, Andy too, that, if you do a great job in this business and you stay with it over the years, this becomes a repetitive business. Entrepreneurs generally stick with something for, 5, 6, 7 years, and then they exit and move on to their next enterprise. And if you do a great job for people, they come back and you become their person. And I have clients that I've done a dozen deals with, either on the buy or sell side. And that's, at this point in my career, that's become 80% of my business. It's all repeat clients, buyers and sellers that are coming back to do another deal.
Yeah, it's so true. So I want to wrap up by, on behalf of all the franchisees, thanking the three of you and the rest of the shareholders for the Transworld Business Brokers, originally Transworld Business Brokers of Florida. It's really inspiring when I hear you guys, walk into an industry and you see that maybe the reputation isn't what it should be, and you aspire to change that reputation, and you've done that. And you look at a business and we're just doing, small deals and mom and pop shops. And then we bring in someone like Peter and we up-level our expertise, and we're now able to serve business owners from small to medium to sometimes very large businesses. And we've done that. And then ultimately, for the competitive spirit that I know is still left in the three of you, you're not just number one in Florida anymore. You've now built the number one business brokerage in the world. So thank you for everything you've done. Inspiring story. I hope our listeners that are either in the business brokerage field or not in the business brokerage field take a lot of lessons out of this session together, of that it takes time and it takes effort. And you can go from a 2 or 3 person office to being number one in the world. So thank you, Tom, Peter, and Andy, for sharing this part of the Transworld story. After our next break, we're going to learn about the next stage, franchising with United Franchise Group.
Thank you.
Hey, Andy, do you know what time it is? It's time for our deal of the week.
Deal of the week.
Sold.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. And it is Deal of the Week. And we are with Kevin Everts from Transworld Business Advisors of Syracuse. And you have a very interesting deal. It's an industry that a lot of people love, especially as kids, and it's busy. And this was a nice deal.
Yes. It was a gymnastics center, and it was the sellers wanted to exit the business and get into retirement. So they came to me as a local business advisor, and originally they just wanted to get $1 million out of the deal. We walked through valuation multiples. They had SDE of close to $560,000. Advise them we should start a lot higher. At the end of the day, they made $250,000 more free than they originally wanted to have. So, it was a great family, great staff, and the buyer was out of town, but it worked out well.
Yeah, so good deals for good people, and it sold for like 1.5, right?
Yeah, 1.4. Yeah,
1.4. So that was almost a 3-time multiple.
Yes.
All right, nice deal, and it had been around for a long time.
Correct. They built up the business over the last 15 years, building a good staff, and that was the key, making sure the staff had stability.
Excellent. So if somebody wants to sell more gymnastics center and want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Everts@tworld.com, because a lot of the buyers were out of state or out of city for sure, downstate, because it's a very popular sport for young kids.
It is. Okay. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Hey, Jessica, you know what time it is?
Money time?
Almost. It's time for listing of the week.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. It is listing of the week, and we have a great one. We have Tom Milana from Transworld Business Advisors of South Florida, Fort Lauderdale, but our international broker extraordinaire, Tom. Yeah, welcome.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be here again.
You got a good deal?
I've got a great deal. Great new listings. Construction company's been around for about 20 years here in South Florida. They put new water main pipes in for all the different municipalities. They represent 20 or 30 cities, everywhere from Miami up to Sarasota and Tampa, doing about 20 million a year in revenue.
Wow, nice deal.
Yeah. Their sellers' discretionary earnings is about 3 million a year. Consistent growth, plenty of room to grow bigger, plenty of heavy equipment involved. They also own real estate, another 3.4 million for that. The business is on the market for 13.5 million, includes some working capital. And again, it's a $3 million bottom line.
Excellent. So if somebody wanted to get in touch with you about it,
yeah, Tom at tworld.com or 561-702-6867.
Great listing. I don't think that'll last long.
Hope not.
All right. Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends on social media. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcasting app. If you have questions, would like to appear, or have suggestions for topics for the show, get in contact with us through our website, thedealboardpodcast.com.